Check out FlipsideGaming.com for all your gaming needs. Use the promo code HEROES to save 10% on all orders over $10. From now through May 6th, if you use that promo code, you will automatically be entered into a drawing to win a War of the Spark booster box. See the description below for details. Hey there, this is John from Heroes and Legends, and today we're going to talk about everything you need to know if you're planning on going to the War of the Spark pre-release. Maybe you've never gone to a pre-release before, you don't know what to expect or what to bring. We got you covered here. So let's get right into it. The first thing I got to tell you, you don't want to go to your pre-release and look like this guy here. Look at Sad Bolas here. He did not prepare for his pre-release. He didn't bring what he needed. He got there and found out that they were already filled up and didn't have enough space for him. We're not going to have that happen to you. So we're going to talk about first, what should you bring with you? A lot of stuff you want to consider taking. Maybe have a backpack to carry some of these things in. First and foremost, bring a pen. Pen and paper is going to be very helpful to have. On one hand, you are going to get a spin down die in your pre-release kit, so you can keep track of your life total that way if you want to. However, I do tell people all the time, if they're planning on playing more competitive tournaments in the future, because pre-release tournaments really are casual, things are a little looser for sure. But if you're going to play in something competitive, it's good to get in the habit of taking your life totals down, both you and your opponent's life totals down on paper. So that way, if there's a discrepancy, it's easy to go back and see what's going on. A judge can look at that and figure out what happened. So for this event, you don't need to worry about that necessarily, but something to think about. Although, even if you don't do that, bring a pen with you, because sometimes you'll have to fill out some kind of form when you get there, whether it's a registration form or maybe you don't have a DCI number and you might need to fill out a paper for that. And many stores don't have extra pens available. I've seen people have to wait in line for pens or borrow pens, or worse yet, some stores will even sell pens. You don't need to be buying a pen at your pre-release, so bring that with you. Also, you're going to want to bring dice, extra dice. Again, you have that spin down die you'll be getting, but if you can bring a few, especially randomized dice, it will be good. Even if they're just 6-sided dice you pull out of a board game, you don't have to necessarily buy something for this. But remember, especially in this set, you have all the loyalty counters to worry about in Planeswalkers. There's +1/+1 counters to keep track of. There's just a lot happening here. You're going to want some extra dice. Also, it kind of helps to roll to see who goes first sometimes. You can roll your spin down die at a pre-release, a casual event, but sometimes that is considered a faux pas because it is not randomized, and there are ways to try to manipulate your roll a little bit if you want to get creative. So people do prefer that you use randomized dice like the ones you see on the screen there. Now, the next thing I would recommend is some kind of deck box. You are going to get a kind of cardboard deck box, which is part of your pre-release kit, but they are very flimsy, especially if you have other things in your backpack. It could start to beat up your cards a little bit. Get something a little more sturdy. Or if you're going to play in multiple events, it's good to have a couple different deck boxes or a binder or maybe a trade binder, something like that, to kind of organize your cards in between events so you don't mix up your card pools or anything like that. Along with that idea, I would also bring some sleeves for your cards. And if you do that, make sure you bring extra sleeves that match. So if I bring exactly 40 sleeves, thinking I'm going to be playing a 40 card deck, one of those sleeves breaks, I'm either stuck not playing with sleeves for the rest of the day, or I have to buy sleeves at the game store, which again is another cost. And you'll have to buy a whole set of matching sleeves, obviously. They won't sell a single that matches yours, right? So you're going to invest more money. If you can just get like 50 sleeves like you see there is just fine. They don't have to be anything fancy. As long as they can survive the tournament, you're fine. You can take those to the event with you. And another thing you might want to do is actually pre-sleeve some basic lands before you go. And the reason for that is tournaments will typically have basic lands that you can borrow at the game store. However, you have to figure out what lands you're going to use, and you have to go over to the station, wait in line a little bit, dig through the lands, and then you have to go back to the table, sleeve them. So you can save yourself a lot of time. You just get more time to focus on your deck and your deck building if you don't have to worry about that. And even if you don't bring quite enough of a type of land, then okay, you might have to go to the station, but at least you're going to save a little bit of time by having those pre-sleeved. Now, sleeves are not absolutely necessary to play, but not only will they keep your cards in nice condition, they will protect them from getting tacky and becoming difficult to shuffle due to a dirty game store table. Some players use playmats too. They are more expensive. I wouldn't recommend buying one just for this event. Maybe if you're going to play in more events in the future, it might be worth getting one at some point. The last thing I would mention, which is not pictured here, is food and drink. Now, game stores many times will sell food or drink, but it's going to be very expensive and they typically don't have a lot of healthy options. And me personally, if I eat something sugary or drink soda or something like that, I have a harder time concentrating than if I had water, maybe like a granola bar or something that's a little healthier. So I try to bring healthy snacks and water with me to the events, because these are not necessarily short events. If you play, say, 4 rounds, which is pretty average, considering those rounds are going to take about an hour or so, there's time in between rounds, and you have your deck building time. There's also going to be usually some sort of rules meeting at the beginning. It could be a long day. Here is your pre-release kit that you're going to get at the game store. It's going to have the cards you're going to use to play in the tournament. We'll look and see what's inside this in just a moment. But another thing to remember, you might want to call the store ahead of time and find out a few details. First off, the time of the tournaments, of course, very important. Secondly, what the format is, because you could have regular tournaments or you could have two-headed giant tournaments, which do require a partner. Now, if you don't have a partner to play with in a two-headed giant format, that can still be okay, because many times you can go to the game store and there will be people there looking for partners, but it's kind of nice knowing that going in. Secondly, you should call the store and find out if they have a pre-registration process or if you need to pre-register, because some stores do have limited space or limited product. You don't want to get there and find out there's no place in the tournament for you and waste your time. You could be going to maybe a different store if that's the case. Now, let's take a look and see what's inside this. You're going to get 6 packs of War of the Spark, your spin down die. There's a little bit of collateral in this package as well. They do have a flyer to help you try to build a deck, especially if you've never played before, but we'll talk about that in just a minute. You're also going to get 2 promo cards. They're both going to be foil. One could be any rare or mythic rare that's in the set randomly. The other one is going to be any planeswalker that's in the set randomly. And they will both be date stamped with the date of the weekend. You can build your deck with any card that you get out of your 6 packs and your 2 foil promo cards. So those count as your pool. Feel free to use them if you want to. You're at the event now. You got your pre-release kit. You're in there. You got everything you need. How do you go about building your deck? Here's some things you might want to consider. And remember, every set's a little different. This one is very unique with all the planeswalkers. You will get 1 planeswalker in every pack. That does change the gameplay quite a bit. You want a 40 card deck. Let's start there though. Yes, you can have more than 40. You can have less than 40, though. That's an illegal deck. But if you have 40 cards, you're good to go. Why would I not want to go 41 cards or 42 cards if I had good cards? Well, basically because the cards you play, there's always going to be at least 1 or 2 cards that are not as good as those other cards you chose. You want to make sure you're always hitting your best cards. To do that, you should play the minimum amount of cards allowed. So if I'm playing a 40 card deck, how many lands does that equate to? Well, typically 16 to 18. 17 is a great average. Probably, I would say 90% of the time I play 17 lands in my deck, but sometimes I'll have a lower curve deck and I could go down to 16, maybe even 15 lands if I'm really low curve. If I have a higher curve deck, I might go up to 18 lands, or if I'm trying to be a little more methodical and controlling, I could go up a little bit. So 17, though, is a good average. You want a lot of creatures. Now, a lot of times I'll say 15 to 17 creatures is probably where you want to be, but in this set, I'm going to go down to 14 to 17 because the planeswalkers are a big part of this set. Now, remember though, don't get crazy with planeswalkers. Yes, potentially, depending on what you opened, you might be able to play like something like 6 to 8 planeswalkers. Does that mean you should play 6 to 8 planeswalkers? Depends on your deck, depends on the planeswalkers. But just remember, you don't want to take too many creature spots up with planeswalkers because planeswalkers aren't creatures. Don't go too deep into planeswalkers and ignore creatures, ignore removal, ignore evasion, because those are all very important parts of your deck. Remember too, evasion is going to be important to deal with other people's planeswalkers, which you know you're going to run into. Now also remember, some planeswalkers are better at defending themselves than others. If you have some that can defend themselves, well then you might be able to go a little bit later on the creatures if you feel confident that maybe you have something that can create a token, or maybe you have another one that could directly damage a creature that's going to come at it. So keep that in mind. There's a lot to think about, especially with all these different planeswalkers out there. Okay, when it comes to your curve, this is what I like to try to do. 1 mana spells 0 to 2, although they give us more good 1 mana spells now than they used to. So a lot of times I found myself running 0. More recently, I could see myself running 1 or 2. 2 mana spells, this is a big part of your curve right here. You want to make sure you're always developing your board state early. This is going to be the meat of your curve, the 2 and 3 spot. 4 to 6 spells in your 2 spot, 3 to 5 spells in your 3 spot. Once we get to 4, things are getting a little higher. We're going to go down that bell curve. 2 to 4 spells is good. 5 mana spells 1 to 3, 6 or more mana spells 0 to 2. Those should be your big bombs that hopefully can close out a game usually. That's what you want to shoot for generally when you're building your deck, but pools can be different and there are definitely exceptions. Okay, let's talk about the mechanics you need to know for this set. Nothing overly complicated here. There's a couple core mechanics that are special to this set, but for the most part, the big thing you need to know is planeswalkers. We've been talking about that. You're going to get one in every pack. They're going to come in a variety of different rarities. Here you see one that's an uncommon, a rare, and a mythic rare. They're going to come in a variety of different colors. Some are going to have hybrid mana like you see in Ashiok, and that means you can use, in this example, blue or black to cast the card, which is kind of nice. So with all of this going on, how do you cast all these cards, especially if they're in different colors? Well, if your pool can support it, there's a lot of ways to fix colors in this set. Here's 3 examples that are all at common that could fit into any deck. Guild Globe, Mana Geode, and Gateway Plaza are all ways to go deeper in color. Be careful, you don't want to get too greedy, just depends on what kind of fixing you have and is it worth it depending on what cards you're trying to play. But at the end of the day, there are ways to go deep into colors here. Next, we're going to talk a little bit about Proliferate. This is a returning mechanic, and basically it says whenever you proliferate, choose any number of permanent and or players, then give each another counter of each kind already there. A little tweak to it from the last time we saw it. However, you're going to notice when you go through your cards that Proliferate shows up in a lot of different places, different colors, and it's going to manifest itself differently. Look at the examples here. We got a creature when it dies, you get to proliferate. You have a creature when it enters the battlefield, you get to proliferate. Here you just simply have a sorcery, you draw a card, but you get to proliferate. So it could be triggering quite often. And this is a great mechanic for the set because it works well with the loyalty counters on Planeswalkers. Also works well with +1/+1 counters, especially Simic colors are going to be using them quite frequently. You don't have to ever choose any target you don't want to choose, so you don't have to pick your opponent's stuff, for example. Only proliferate the targets that you want to proliferate. Okay, let's talk about the next big mechanic, and that's Amass. Amass basically is a way to create a zombie army token or grow a zombie army token that you already have. Let's talk about Amass 1 first. Basically, if I play Toll of the Invasions in the middle there, and I get to use that ability, then I can amass, which means I'm going to check my board state. Do I have a zombie army token on it? If I don't, I get one, it's going to have a +1/+1 counter on it because this is Amass 1. Now you could have Amass 1, Amass 2, Amass 3, for example. The number at the end would let you know how many +1/+1 counters would go on that token. Now let's say I check the board state and I already have a zombie army token. Well, I can't make a new one, but what I can do is I can take those +1/+1 counters and put it on my existing one, so it gets bigger. The good thing about that is it almost feels like a haste style effect where your opponent is not necessarily prepared for the fact that this thing is going to be larger than they accounted for at the end of their turn when they were working out blockers and such. So you might have one that's a 2/2. If I play Dreadhorde Twins, now I get a 3/3 creature and I get 2 +1/+1 counters on my 2/2 zombie army. Now it's a 4/4. Even though my 2/2 will have Summoning Sickness, the 4/4 zombie army token won't because it already was on the battlefield prior to the turn. So this can be a very aggressive mechanic. Now, the one thing you got to remember, though, is tokens are a little more flimsy compared to a regular creature. Not only could they be destroyed by a regular way a creature could be destroyed, but they could also be bounced and taken care of that way. Look at Callous Dismissal, for example. For a blue and 1, it's a common sorcery that's going to return target non-land permanent to its owner's hand. You get an Amass creature, which is nice, but your opponent could lose theirs no matter how big it is for just 2 mana. They didn't do a lot of bounce spells in this set because they wanted to try to protect this mechanic a little bit, but just be aware of cards like that and opportunities to play them. Aside from some bounce spells, I think if you can get them in your deck, you want to focus on evasion because of those planeswalkers I mentioned earlier. If you can pull it off, a bounce spell or 2, some flyers, something unblockable, they're going to be premium cards in the sealed pool. And here's a look at those zombie army tokens. You'll find these randomly in packs. If you don't get one for some reason, I think you will. They're going to be pretty plentiful, but you can always use just anything to notate a zombie army. You don't necessarily need the token itself to do so. The last thing I want to say about the pre-release, remember, I mentioned this at the top of the show, but it is a casual event. If you're nervous about going, you really don't need to be. It's really about opening the cards for the first time, trying things out, seeing how the set plays, and just having a good time. Yes, there are prizes, and there are different types of events. Some are a little more spiky, sure. If they have big prize pools, you could expect people to be a little more serious. But most stores do 3 to 5 rounds of Swiss, which means even if you lose, you can still play every round. And then prizes are based on how many wins you have. So if you have 0 wins, maybe you won't get anything. Some stores will still give you a pack. If you get 3 or 4 wins, then you might be getting more packs of cards, which is great. Typically, whenever I've gone to a pre-release, everybody is very friendly. They want to help new players. And they're not taking it overly seriously. It is a casual event, and everybody should be made to feel welcome, and in my experiences, that is always how it has been. Many times I'll see experienced players helping new players with their deck and stuff like that. Alright, hopefully this video helped you out a little bit, especially if you have never gone to a pre-release before. Definitely check it out. I think this is going to be a really fun set. It might be a little more complicated with all the Planeswalkers. It is a style of play you might not be used to. But again, don't let that stop you. Go to the event, have a good time, and let me know in the comments below how it goes. How was your event? Did you have fun? What kind of pulls did you get? What was your results? I always like to hear that type of thing, whether it's in this video's comments or another video. But until next time, hey, thanks for watching. Please remember to like and subscribe, and have a great day. Hey, thanks for watching. This video is made possible through the generous support of viewers like you on Patreon. Check out the description below for links to our Patreon page, as well as our Amazon affiliate store, where a small percentage of all sales will also help support the channel. Finally, if you haven't had a chance yet to subscribe, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any of the new videos on Heroes and Legends. Talk to you again soon, and have a great day.